Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to the award-winning podcast, Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. I'm also the host of Moms Don't Have Time to Lose Weight, and I'm the editor of the anthology, which you should run out and buy, called Moms Don't Have Time to, a quarantine anthology. All proceeds of that book go to COVID-19 vaccine research. And I'm the editor-in-chief of Moms Don't Have Time to Write, a new publication on Medium, and we're accepting submissions, so please send your personal essays there. And if all that isn't enough, you can follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and my website is zibbyowens.com. Okay, now back to this amazing podcast.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
I'm so excited to be doing this finally. I feel like it's been a long time coming.
Well, I'm so excited, and I feel like I'm reading the anthology, and it's so great. And I feel like I'm just so excited to talk to you. I read your acknowledgments, which I also always do first.
And by the way, and I probably shouldn't even mention this, but I'm trying to sell a memoir right now called The Book Messenger. And the person I'm talking to about it the most is your editor, Carmen.
She is. So we should get on the phone after this call.
Okay.
I cannot say enough good things to her about her. Like, she's so wonderful that you wouldn't be in better hands than that as like a person, a mother, and all those things, which are wonderful just as on the side. But then her actual editing, she's really smart, she's honest, she's fair. Like, nothing is ever everything is like a conversation. Like, and her edits are brilliant. And I think the only one I ever didn't take, I later regretted when I read the book, and I was like, oh, Carmen, like, she's there are no other words. So her, okay. And also, but I'm assuming I also love my agent. So as I was reading your acknowledgments, I wasn't sure where you were in your publishing process. And I was also going to tell you that, like, my agent is also, like, I somehow happen to have the two best people, but maybe you already have.
I have an agent, but who I have a contract with for 2 years. So I'm committed. Who's your agent?
Dan Mandel.
Okay.
At Sanford Grieberger.
Okay.
He does not do contracts. A lot of them don't, because they want you to be able to go if you're.
Yeah. I'm with Gersh, and it's fine. But well, anyway, we can talk offline about this. By the way, there's construction in my building, so I'm in my daughter's room. So,
well, it's beautiful wallpaper.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, let me do your podcast, and then we can always talk. They might not even want to buy it, but I've had a bunch of conversations and emails, and they're supposed to let me know this week. So I don't know. We'll see.
My fingers are so crossed for you, because she's. And the other thing, when we talk offline, I have so much to say about Amazon's marketing versus like everywhere else that I've been in a lot of, you've
done a lot of.
I don't.
But the top line is Amazon is better or worse?
Worse? No, wonderful.
Wonderful.
They are wonderful. They just like know how to get it. They know who is reading what, and who they should market it to, and how they should market it. And I will say, like, I did a lot of my own press, or press has been things where I've gotten lucky, like the Phoebe situation, like right. That made my whole, I'm not just saying this, not like I'm saying, that like made my whole book launch. Like, I opened that email up and I was like, what? Like, I like love Good Morning America. I've always loved it since I was like, I always imagined being on it as like when I used to be an actress. I would always, like, when I was in my early 20s, that's what I did. And then I would imagine, like, I would visualize like interviews and like going, I always loved Good Morning America. And one time I randomly went on it, but to talk about like a style thing, something totally different. And I feel like it keeps coming, like that, like made my whole book. I was like, it's Good Morning America. There's like nothing bigger for me. For most people. So anyways, a lot of times my PR has been, one of my friends here is my friend Fran Hauser, and she helped me like with We Were Mothers. She helped me like she talked to someone at the New York Post who read it and loved it, and then they put it on as like that was really helpful. So I find that like you will still, but you have all those connections, you will still do a lot of your own PR, and they will too. But what you can't, I don't think what anyone can do like them is their marketing and like getting it, like sales. Like, my books are selling like they've never sold before. Like, it's bonkers to me. Like, I've been doing this for 10 years. My books always do just fine. Publishers always happy. They sign me up for more. It's all good. But this is like a different level of sales. Like it's nuts.
Wow.
It's crazy.
I wonder if we should include that in the podcast, or you would rather not.
That's a good question. No, I think that's fine. I think I can say I'm like so happy with how sales have been for adult books. Like I feel, because I do feel like some of it is that, so a lot of it's them, and a lot of it is that I do feel like I found my niche. Like I'm excited to talk about adult
Yeah.
stuff.
Okay. But you know what? Let me just. I was supposed to have. Hold on. I have something at 9:30, so I'm just gonna see if I can push that back a few minutes now that I've delayed this whole thing because I was late. Hold on. Hold on. Esther. Um. Okay. 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 Recording. Okay. I'm just gonna say welcome. We'll jump right into it. Sound good?
Great.
Okay. Welcome, Katie. Thank you so much for coming on Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books to discuss open house and so much more.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. So excited.
Yay. So Katie, you've written many books, YA, adult. Now you're in this new thriller genre. You are a jewelry designer, a former actress, you a mom. You've done like a zillion things. I'm so impressed. Let's start by talking about open house, if you don't mind. And just give readers like the top line on this book, and then I want to delve into your whole life.
Okay, well, this one is about a crime that happened 10 years ago. A girl named Emma walked into the woods on her really bucolic, beautiful upstate New York campus, and she was never seen again. And the crime and her disappearance has haunted her family, and especially her sister and her parents, of course. And for her sister, it's always been this thing that she felt like she had this almost magical thinking feeling that she was the only one that was ever going to be able to get to the bottom of it. So she's gone away for college. She's incredibly bright, her younger sister, who drives the book, Haley. And she comes back to Waverly, the fictional town based on an area very close to where I live, that her sister has disappeared all those years ago. And what happens is when you open the book, you find that Emma's bracelet has been found in a part of the woods where it really shouldn't have been. The police often thought that she could have jumped and sort of caused her own death in some way. And the location of what's found means that that's not possible that could have happened. And so it sort of hurdles on from there, and Haley has to get to the bottom of what has truly happened to her sister. And we go back and forth between the present day time, where a lot of the players who were there that night that Emma died are now adults. So we see them in college during the book and their behavior then, and then we see them now as these sort of high functioning adults in this beautiful bucolic town, and Haley has to interact with them. And they, of course, were all in some way, we find out how they were involved, if they were involved. And it's this piece that Haley has to get to the bottom to. So
very exciting. I have to say, I listened to this in the car with my with my twins who were almost 14, and we were all like riveted at what was going on. And as I was listening, I was wondering about your own experience with grief and loss, because the scenes between the sisters, like not between them, but as one sister is mourning the other, and that feeling of like not knowing and the loss. And even there was one line you had about how she had to escape, like she went to Stanford to escape the grief that her parents were coping with, because of course it happens to the whole family. So I just wanted to hear a little more about that one element, and then so
I'm from a very big Irish Catholic family, so we have had a lot of death. There's been so many of us. People have died young, people have died too young, people have died a bit later where it's easier to cope with, and of course all these different things go into my experience of grief. But I almost think more what it is that I write about what I'm afraid of. And I'm afraid of losing someone that I really love. I mean, that is, and I'm sure you relate to that as a mom. Like before I had children, I had, people that I loved, of course, so very much. And it was so hard to lose them. And I'm particularly close to my sister. And my sister is also same age difference as Emma and Haley. And my sister is also she's a nephrologist. So it was fun to write Haley as a med student, because I feel like I went through med school with my sister. Not really, I didn't have to do the hard part of it, but I was often with her at some point during the day. Those days we both lived in New York City then. And so I felt like I enjoyed writing aspect of her. But I would say that, and because people have asked me that before, they've been like, well, how did you write about this grief piece? And I think one of the things that's helpful about having that having that experience of when you really delved into characters when I was younger and I was doing all these different things, is I find that I'm so afraid of it that I have to write about it. Like, I'm so afraid of any kind of grief and loss that it is in all my work, and I don't know how to. I've even had times where I've thought, should I just try to write something really happy and so cheer, like some kind of like like people meet and they fall in love, and then maybe they have like one obstacle to overcome, but it's all good. And but I just find that I do keep returning to this subject, and I just think it is that I have to write about the things that scare me. Even in one of the themes that is in the book, particularly with Josie, without giving too much away, is that element of jealousy. And I even find even in little ways, like I am afraid of one thing that I will steer away from if I sense it in a relationship is any type of like female jealousy. Makes me nervous. And so then I found that I wrote about that. She is so jealous of Emma, that Emma has Noah back in college and all these other things. So I think I find that sometimes the scarier things to me aren't necessarily like the boogeyman in the woods. It's more these things that can happen in everyday life that are, so I keep returning to it, which means that sometimes when I write, I am unsettled, but then there is a little bit of an element of sort of when you face something head on and you actually sit in it for a while and feel uncomfortable. Sometimes that's, helpful. Maybe in some way, or maybe I'm torturing myself. I mean, I haven't figured that out yet.
No, it's this whole what if, like, what if this happens? How would I handle it? And as you find in life, no matter what life throws at you, somehow or other, you handle it like
Yeah,
you just do and you get through it. And your books are like, your characters are doing that for you.
right. And even that idea of what would someone do? I mean, I think that that's why all of us love, I mean, most of the women and men I talk to, I mean, we love TV shows for that reason, right? And really good books for that reason. Characters are put in these really extraordinary circumstances. And my characters are a lot, I feel like I know them really well. I feel like they're like maybe some of my, not like my friends, but someone that I would see at drop off and I wouldn't know their inner life. I would see them at preschool drop off. I wouldn't know their inner life. I wouldn't know their circumstances. So particularly in this book, Priya, I really enjoyed writing this, I don't know if enjoyed is the right word, but I felt like I really wanted to write this character who experiences this, which I think all of us have to different degrees, or most people have to different degrees. And for her, staying married to Brad, part of that is, sure, she could find a therapist or she could find a psychiatrist, but to have somebody, to feel so unsafe in your own mind and to have somebody there as this doctor who is every day monitoring her moods, making sure she's okay. And so if her number one driver is to stay with her son, and I love Priya's relationship with her son, like she just loves her son so much. And I obviously relate to that. I love my I love my daughters, of course, so much. And I feel like that's her number one priority, is to stay healthy, to stay on track, keep her mind on track, to not have that sort of breakdown that she has much earlier with Elliot when he's 1. And she talks about that a little bit. So to not go there again, to have this sort of breakdown in a school parking lot in front of all these parents when she has to sit down, has a panic attack, can't get up, he's with her, someone tries to, pick him out. So to have that be your ultimate fear, that somehow your kids are going to be taken away, and to then be in this marriage where there's this person who keeps you think this person's keeping you on track, like how much would you stay through? And I think I would stay through a lot, truly, if that was my situation. And so that's why I felt like she could put all her suspicions about them and some of his transgressions aside and try to make it work for that long.
I was kind of chuckling, although I probably shouldn't have been, when you wrote about Priya and having the panic attack and like bending over and trying to deal with herself, and how a kind mother came to try to, take the baby away. And so she like lunged, you said something like, I don't know, ferocious animal or something like that. And I'm like, well, that's not going to endear her to the moms either.
Of course. Like here we are trying to all keep it together at drop off
Right.
and not cry. And then and then you lunge at a mother. I mean, that's about as low as preschool drop off has gone in a while.
Yes, that's, yeah.
Yeah.
And yet I miss preschool drop off so much now that it's with
Uh,
COVID times and my kids are finally out of preschool, but oh my gosh. Well, There's so much great stuff in your book, right? There's the suspense and the inner workings of the mind. And I'm so glad you brought up the medical stuff, because I was wondering when I was listening about how you knew all of that, because that was a lot. And even like the identification of the body and how she names it, and like Susie, I don't know, it just like it all felt so real. And you can like feel her walking down these halls where there's been this trauma in the past, and yet she comes back to it, right? Like she's pulled back to her family home and the scene of the crime, serious, literally. So I don't know. And of course the open house thing, I'm like obsessed with open houses myself. Oh my God.
Me too.
Like every time we have free time, we go to an open house. So
So do we. And I think that there is this idea of sort of along with the theme of you go into, or at least I do, when I go into these open houses. I just wrote an essay about this. It turns out I'm terrible at personal essays. So
I don't believe that. I don't believe that at all.
I will email it to you since you love open houses. I will email you this essay, but like I haven't even sent it. Anyway.
Send it to me. I want to read it.
I will absolutely send it to you. So it talks about this idea because my husband and I do the same thing. We love to go to open houses. And I think what it is that one of the things for me is you imagine almost like, not only is it so beautiful, right? This other home, or perhaps it's not, whatever it is you find there, but you imagine yourself, it's like a new life. And you wonder, what are the people like that live there? What would I be like if I lived there? Which is a lot of what writing is. So I think that, my agent also loves real estate, and we often will talk about, we had this conversation, and he did once say to me, he's like, you've got to have something at some point that has to do with your obsession with these, open houses. So, but my poor real estate agent was like, I can't believe you set a book at an open house. Like, I have to go to these, and you made me read this. And
on the other hand, maybe it will help your agent, because other people who might not share our habit might start doing that. Who knows?
Right. So we just had what the essay is about also is we just sold our house and bought a new one. So you can imagine that during all this time, I've written this book, and now I'm having open house. I mean, I kept, and my imagination is already so run away that they can run away with all these scenarios that could happen. And, but now I've thrown a body into the situation, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is not a good thing to write about when you're about to do it. But I certainly, I have thought before that, most, I think real estate agents mostly are, maybe, I'm not sure how it breaks down between gender. And of course, any gender is vulnerable when you're somewhere expecting to welcome people in the door who you don't know, and you're standing there by yourself. And it just felt like, it felt like something about all those things together seemed to work as to have that be the big set piece.
And Katie, tell me about how you wrote this book. You have 3 kids. How old are your kids?
4.
You have 4. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay.
How old are your kids?
So I have, my oldest is about to be 10, and my second oldest son is 7, just turned 7. And then I have twins. So I begged for my 3rd baby and got twins. So I went on a campaign, like, all the reasons that we had to have a 3rd. I mean, we just had to, and finally my husband said, all right. And I went to that sonogram, and I had my son with me. I had my youngest son, because at that time I didn't really use babysitters. I've since discovered the beauty of babysitters. I used to only write when they would nap. That was with the boys, I wrote when they nap. I'm a pretty fast writer. So I feel that's like one thing I've got going for me, is that I usually will sit down and I just write. I just get it done. It's got to get done. It's like going to the gym or something, and it feels good, and it's an escape, and it usually goes pretty quickly. So I went to the sonogram, and after it is, you've gotten enough sonograms, you kind of know what you're looking at. So my 3-year-old was with me, and I said, so at the time he was 3, and I said, don't say the word pregnancy in front of him. He will understand. He's 3. He'll understand. Please just don't use the word like baby, pregnancy. Like he thought he was watching some cartoon that was blurry or something on the screen. So she has the thing on there doing the thing, and I see 2 small people. What I thought was that, I mean, they were these 2, and I'm just watching her do it, and she says to me, so now she knows that she's been given words, like we're playing a game. She's been given words she can't say. So she says to me, oh, we're talking about the weather. And she says, so do twins run in your family? And I said, no. Do they now? And she said, yes, they do. And there they were. And my 2 little girls, and they're the dreamiest, funniest. They're almost 3 now. And they're amazing, but it was such a surprise. I mean, that night I came home, so I texted my husband, everything's okay, I went to sonogram, everything's okay. I didn't want to tell him while he was at work or over the phone, because he's budgeted the rest of our lives. Will we be able to send them to college. And then we got home that night and I made sure that he had some of my like very, very mediocre / poor cooking, and, you know, just so he wouldn't faint or something. He had dinner and then I went out and broke the news.
Oh my gosh.
They're amazing girls. We're crazy for them. So it's all really wonderful, but it was quite a surprise.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had twins first.
That's right.
Yeah, my twins are almost 14. It's so crazy. 13 and a half, 14, almost. And then I had 2 other ones. But anyway, we can talk twins another time. Crazy. Wait, okay, so now how on earth did you do this? Tell me.
Okay, so usually what I'll do is the girls would nap in the beginning. When this book was getting written, the girls would nap from about like 9 to 11 or 9 to 10:30. And that is actually, thank God, I mean, I'm not writing War and Peace either. So I feel like maybe it's just, you know, it is what it is. I write an hour and a half a day and that's it. Now when they go to preschool, I'll do more. I'll have 9 to 12. But generally what I do is write in the morning. And now we have a wonderful sitter. So if I need to do some writing, I'll do it in that 2-hour clip. I can't really write more than 2 hours. I don't know what it is, but it's not, I just need to just do it and get it done with, and then it's done for the day. I might work up back to the point. I remember I started off ghostwriting for a series. I'm not allowed to say what series it is, but I used to ghostwrite. And that was the best training in the world because you had to write a book in between 6 to 8 weeks, a 65,000 word book. So you just had to get it done. You sat down and I would shoot for 2,000 words a day. Now I shoot for 1,000. And if I can do 1,000, I'm done. And as you know, books are generally anywhere between 70 to 90,000 words. So what I always tell writers is like, even if you can just get 1,000 words a day, you can have a book done in 70 days. Then you go back and edit and do all your stuff, but it's less of a mountain sometimes than I think it's made out to be, because you just get it done. Even if the first draft is really not great, if you can commit to either 500 or 1,000 words a day, and then it'll get done.
So take me back a little bit to how you started off. How did you get in the literary world? Tell me about the acting. Like, how did this all, just give me like a timeline of what happened here.
So I went to school at Notre Dame, and I went thinking I was going to like either be like I always wanted to be a writer, but I figured, okay, I'll get my degree. I'll like do something like I think I studied sociology for a little while. But then somewhere sort of around sophomore year, I loved acting so much. I'm like, I'm going to be a theater major. So I like broke that news to my parents, which was a conversation, but they're hugely supportive, but they were kind of like, oh my gosh. And then, so that was really helpful because all those years I studied all this writing and all these characters, and you had to know that in every scene, your character wants something. And I always think about that now with writing, like, what does this person really want? Like if every moment we're walking into a room with somewhat of a goal or something we want. So all that scene study and really getting into characters and dialogue was so helpful for now. So I did that there, and then I graduated, and I loved doing plays at Notre Dame so much. I am a workhorse. I have like many, many flaws, but I love to work. I love to like work at something that I love. I'm not good at like cleaning my closet. I was always like a terrible intern places. Like I could never make the fax machine work. I had an internship at MTV. Like I was so bad at my job that they were like, just sit in the corner and like read some scripts. Like you're not the intern that's super helpful and you can't make the VHS tapes work. Like, so I graduated, I came to the city, and what I really missed while I was acting was when you go from doing all these plays that you get roles in and you get to be with, your fellow actors and you're rehearsing. It's so fun. I got to the city and it was like, you went on auditions. So you would all day have this one audition where you got to say like one line about how creamy the yogurt is. And you're like, the part where you're really working doesn't happen. So I barely got jobs. I definitely did some plays. Like one night, no one came to it. I had that happen. We did The Importance of Being Earnest with my friend, who's also now a writer. She's a memoirist. And we were playing Cecily and Gwendolyn, and no one showed up. And we were just like, do we do the play for no one? I think we did. I don't know what happened, but so, and then I got some like random roles in independent films and things like that. And I loved it, but I just sort of was like, I gotta do something else. So then when I was 24, I was working in this little boutique. I was making like, $10 an hour, working as like the sales girl. And in the way that you do when you're 24 and you have all this like gusto, and I'm like much more vulnerable now and sort of like, oh, can I do that? Can I get in that canoe or will it tip over? Like, I mean, now I'm like a different human. Back then though, I didn't have kids yet. And I was like, I was like 24 and I said, oh, I could make jewelry just like this. Like not just like this, but I could make some jewelry. it'll be fine. I'll just try to make some jewelry. So I made some jewelry. It was terrible. But one day I was wearing a piece at my job and someone said like, oh, I like that. And I was like, oh, it's on sale for $100, which I just like came up with off the top of my head. And then, I mean, it was like, it had taken me, it was somewhat expensive to make it. It wasn't that I was trying to rip the lady off. It's more that I hadn't really set up something where I would really even, usually in that situation, a boutique owner who is now still my really good friend, God willing, like luckily I should say. So then she said, well, if you're selling your jewelry, just like, she was so nice. She was maybe 5 years older than me at the time. Well, still is, since that's how like, you know, she said, go ahead and clear off a shelf. You can sell your jewelry here. So I made all this jewelry and for some reason it totally took off. Like celebrities started coming in and wearing it. Kate Winslet came in and she's like my favorite person in the world. And I couldn't tell, I was so nervous. I couldn't tell her that it was mine. And she was just like, this is so lovely. And I was like, I saw Titanic 12 times in the theater, not just 12 times. And she bought a piece and like all these big, like, you know, big stars bought it. And then all these magazines started covering it. And it was one of those strange occurrences of how sometimes you don't set out to do something. Like it was almost like the jewelry was like an afterthought. I was like, well, I really want to be a writer or an actress. That's what I want to do. And the jewelry was the thing that actually happened. And so then I started going on styles, like being a TV host. For, you know, I had only done acting, but TV was like a pretty natural switch and you can kind of go and make up something about some pair of pants that you could match with a shirt and this pair of earrings. So I went on as like a style expert in places. I co-hosted the show on the Home Shopping Network, which was so fun. I was 29. They would fly me down to Florida. It was like the height of my whole life experience. It was so fun. They did your makeup. You got to have like snacks in your green room. And I love snacks. And it was great. It was great. And then from there, I thought, okay, like the one thing that kept sticking out to me was if I hadn't done the jewelry thing, if I had just said, no, that's not what I'm going to do. I'm a writer. I'm an actress. I'm not going to try something different. None of that would have happened. And so I felt like there should be a book about, you know, like making your creative way as a creative person and saying yes to a lot of different things to see what sticks and see how it happens. So I wrote this proposal for a book called Creative Girl, which did sell. It sold to Jennifer Cassius at Running Press.
Oh, I love her. She's so nice.
Yeah. She's lovely. And so she shepherded me through this book. I found my agent that way, and my agent now. He's the most like wonderful human on the whole planet. He's wonderful. And so that all helped because then I wrote a novel and I was like, well, this is the best thing ever. Like getting up, writing in your jammies and like just getting your stuff done. You don't need anybody else's permission to work when you write. You just need a computer, which is a big privilege, a computer and a space and time, which all those things are, you know, not the easiest to get. But if you have that, you can write something. So I thought, well, now I want to try this. So I wrote a novel after that, but it didn't sell. And I was heartbroken. It was like a 350-page, like paranormal romance. And it didn't sell. But I was at that point so stubborn. I was like, I'm going to make this work. This has to work. I got to figure out how to do this because this is the best job. And at that point, I was 29, 30, thinking about starting a family and thinking this would be the best job, right? You know, versus flying down to Florida and filming a TV show, it would actually be a really wonderful job to just when your child naps or whatever. You know, I didn't really know at that point what it entails, but I thought this would be something I could do. So I just kept writing, and then I got a job doing the ghostwriting. So I wrote 3 books that were not under my own name. One was a revision, 2 were ones that I fully wrote. And then because of that, so I got the attention of an editor at HarperCollins named Alessandra Balzer, who's a wonderful, wonderful person. And there was a woman who named Brenda Bowen, and she had this idea for a book called The Boyfriend App. And she said, and she gave me one line. She was so free about it. She was like, what if there was this book about a girl who creates a boyfriend app on her phone, and it can get her any guy that she wants. And she was so laid back about it. And she said, go. And then like, take it and run. So I wrote a proposal for that book, and Brenda and I presented that book to Alessandra, and she bought it in a preamp, which was so exciting. And that's like sort of where it started. They then signed me up for, that book was a 2-book deal. So I did the Boyfriend app, the Pretty app, and then Alessandra signed me up for The Academy, which is a book that came out in 2018. So I did that all while the boys were little. And then I felt we moved up to Westchester, and I started to feel more like an adult, and I wanted to write about adults. And I felt like at this point I was a mother. I'd been married, you know, several years, and I just wanted to write about adult things. And so my agent said to me I was taking a break. I had a huge revision on the Academy. And my agent said, just take this summer and go write the book that you want to read. He was like, I just want you to sit down, write the book that you wish you had this summer to read. And so I wrote We Were Mothers in 6 weeks. Now, Open House took me a bazillion years to write, so sometimes it doesn't happen. But We Were Mothers was like one of those magical ones where I couldn't wait. I don't outline on purpose so that I don't know what happens and that I can't wait to see what happens. And the characters sort of do their own thing, and I just kind of like quickly write it down, and they often will surprise me and do strange things and say strange things and things that I didn't see coming. Like in Open House, the person who ends up doing it, I had gone I don't want to spoil it for anyone who hasn't read it, but I had gone the entire book thinking that it was someone else. And then all of a sudden they were down there, and you know what happens. And then it felt like that's what it is. And so then I went back and I felt like that's the book. And I showed my agent, he was like, that's the book. That's the ending. That's it right there. And, you know, he says what he says when he's down there and all that stuff. And so I went back and sort of added some things to that character to sort of hopefully have there be some meat there and some other things going on that would make you think, okay, yep, that could happen. And so then We Were Mothers went quickly and sold to Carmen Johnson at Amazon Little A, who is wonderful. And then she signed me up for Open House. And then I have another book with them called The Break that's going to come out. I think it's in 2022, and I think it's fall 2022. I have to check that. But and it's about a mom who goes to give birth in a New York City hospital, and she has a traumatic birth, and she can't remember the birth, and often much of what leads up to it. She just can't. She has a terrible birth. Which has happened to, frankly, a decent amount of my friends. And it felt like something that I wanted to write about. And I think it's really under talked about. And I'm hoping to sort of, in this thriller, I'm hoping to talk really respectfully, and I'm hoping to do it well, to talk about maternal health and people needing help and not always getting it, and all the things that go into the postpartum period. So she comes home with her beautiful baby girl, and her sitter, who is a 22-year-old, she's an actress. She's much in the same position that I was in when I first arrived in the city. She has this sitter. I also babysat a ton when I got to the city. And Rowan, my main character, who's 34, accuses June, the sitter, of harming the baby, but when June has not. So Rowan experiences this huge break, thinks her baby has been harmed, starts to scream at June, and looks down and sees that her baby is right there in the bassinet and is completely fine. So June leaves the apartment. The neighbors have heard that there has been a kerfluffle, because I want to set it in the West Village of Manhattan, which is where we used to live. And they, you know, everybody knows your business sort of out in the hallway, especially. And so the neighbors have heard what has happened. And the next day, June goes missing. And of course, Rowan is suspected. So Rowan will sort of need to piece her mind back together, like this postpartum mind back together, to be able to figure out what happened to June. And I'm hoping to tell it from both of their perspectives. That's what I'm doing now. I'm about maybe 40, 50 pages into Rowan, and then I'll just switch into June, and you'll see her 6 months before and sort of leading up and what she's gotten herself, what's sort of going on in that whole world between everyone that's in it, with all the other men and women that are, you know, in it. But so we'll see. So I'm happy it's nice to have work. Like when you're a creative person, it's nice to be signed up for something, because you know that, okay, the next 2 years, at least I can work on this, and I'm employed. And those are things obviously to feel very grateful for anybody. But and when you're creative and you don't have a consistent paycheck, it's nice to feel like, okay, I know what I'm doing for the next 2 years.
That's amazing. What a story. I feel like I'm so inspired by your whole trajectory and your energy. It's awesome.
Inspired by your trajectory and your energy and your books.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Amazing. Wait, so do you have advice for aspiring authors?
And so my biggest thing is just to write every day. And what I think people forget is when you first start writing, it's often really crappy. I was in a class when I was 28, and I kid you not, I didn't know whether you put the question mark. I remember this vividly. I'm 28 years old. Now I was started off as like, I don't know how I didn't learn this, but I didn't know that you put the question mark inside the quotation marks. I was putting it outside. This is only 12 years ago. Like, I feel like when you start, sometimes it's crappy and the first one doesn't sell. But if you really want to do it, you just keep doing them. And it's also the other thing that I always like to remind people is, and it's hard. And when you hear this from someone who's been published, you're like, oh, come on, you're right. But first of all, the publishing thing is one thing. It's also nice to be paid for your work. So that's for sure. But also, writing a whole novel and letting people into your world is by far the most gratifying thing. Like, to me, the fact that you listened to this book and you know these characters who are so real to me, And my favorite part of every single book I write is I send the first draft to my dad. And it's by far the best part. It doesn't get better than that day. He reads it, and of course he loves it because he's my dad, but also he talks about the characters like they're real. He says to me, like, do you really, do you think that this would happen, or should this happen? Like, it's by that conversation I look forward to the entire process that I write a book. So to sort of remember that your close people that are close to you, are going to read the story, whether it sells or not. So just sit down and write the first one, and then keep writing it until you get where you want to be. Either somebody picks it up, or you self-publish it, or you do what you want to do with it. But if you really love to write, I think you just do it every day. And if it's helpful to set a word count, it is for me. I say do that too. And then you can quickly get to your goal of having a finished book.
Awesome. Okay. Well, first of all, we have to get together after this because we have it's just so many things in common, so many additional questions I want to talk to you about, but we're like almost out of time. I can't believe it. I cannot wait to read your next book or listen to it. I am thrilled to have connected with you. I'm just so excited about this whole thing, and I'm so energized that like everything you say just like validates so many things that like deep within me I believe that like you just have to keep going, and the first novels are usually terrible, and if you love it you'll just keep doing it. And it almost makes me like how real characters are is something I've been like mulling over. Like all day I talk to people about their characters who they believe are basically real people. It's like I want to now have a party for just all the characters. Do you know what I mean? Like I feel like I know these people really well.
Them in town. Like sometimes I think one of them is going to walk in and I wouldn't even be surprised. I would just like get her a coffee. I mean, depending on which character it was. Some of them I would not buy a coffee for, but
that's true. Yeah. Got to be careful.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, Katie, thank you. I'm excited to follow the rest of your career, and we will definitely be talking more. And thank you for coming on the podcast.
So much for having me. Thank you. Thank you for all your author support, and what you do is awesome. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay. Bye. More soon. Thanks for listening to this episode of Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens and at Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. Also sign up for my newsletter at zibbyowens.com and sign up for my virtual book club and meet lots of authors on Zoom every other week. Thanks so much to Steve and Ryan at Texture Sound for the sound editing. And thank you to Morning Moon Productions for providing this fantastic intro and outro music.